Okay, so today we are reading chapter 19. It's called The Python Jewel. So, last chapter in chapter 18, you guys had read about how they were finally in the Serpent Kingdom, and Tuntuni was going, "Oh, we're gonna die," because the floor was filled with serpents. So, I mean, it's Serpent Kingdom. Of course, it's filled with serpents, right? But this is the chapter where we find out a bit more about the jewel, and we can actually see, hopefully, a little bit more about maybe the Demon Queen, so you can help you answer that question in your assignment this week. All right, so chapter 19, the Python Jewel. It took more than an hour for all the snakes to slither down through the open doorway in the lake. The sun was fully in the sky before we made our way down to the ground again. In fact, there were still a few snakes slithering their way toward the lake, but we had to risk it. Neil figured that the doorway might close up entirely if all the snakes had gone inside. He was right. No sooner had we followed at a distance the last few snakes down the secret entrance the last few snakes down the secret entrance than the doorway of the water closed behind us. It was dark as midnight below the surface of the lake. I held onto the back of Neil's shirt as I basically stumbled through the archway and down the long flight of stairs. You know, I was actually 10 years old when I found out my mother and what she was, Neil whispered as we stumbled along, one stair at a time. I always knew that the other queens didn't like her, but I thought they were just jealous because she was the first Rani, the first queen, and her son was going to be king. Maybe this isn't the best time to exchange life stories, I said back to him. Neil was showing a less than ideal sense of timing. We were climbing down a magical under a lake staircase into a kingdom filled with killer snakes. This wasn't really the time for a heart-to-heart chat about his childhood. But Neil just kept on talking. When it came out that she was actually a Rokoshi in disguise, they wanted to exile both of us. They even wanted to kill us. The dank underwater air, not to mention my own sense of doom, was making me shiver, and I wondered if all this gabbing was Neil's way of dealing with maybe his own nervousness. Has anyone done that before, where you get really nervous and you just start talking a lot?
Yes.
Yes, you've done that before, Serene. Hakeem, you've done that too. Matve, you've done that as well? Yeah, I do that too. Sometimes if I get nervous, I just start talking a lot. Sometimes I just say whatever comes to my head to try to distract myself. Okay,
Yes.
I hissed. Sorry, yeah, you did too? Yeah. Okay, I hissed as we kept climbing down. Albite, I guess since you're here now, we know your mom's alive, that maybe your father stopped everyone from killing you, right? Yeah, he did stop them, but he threw her out of the palace and then he made Lal the crown prince instead of me. Oh, so that's what happened, I thought to myself. Maharaja had unfairly discriminated against Neil just because of who his mother was. I felt a new sense of sympathy for the half-demon prince. His family life seemed a lot more difficult than mine. So I guess after that, maybe your mom got angry and then just ate everything in sight? Yeah, basically, he said as we neared the bottom of the stairs. The thing was, she had promised herself that she was going to live a human life when she fell in love with my father. Oh, I said to her. So I guess she felt betrayed after all the sacrifice that she did. I was forced to banish her from our lives. Otherwise, my father would have just found a way to kill her too. So kill her for sure. When we got right down to it, the Rokoshi queen didn't seem to have been treated very fairly. I mean, not that it was an excuse to eat people, but I mean, we know why she was doing it. So there's your answer to think about. Do you think the Raja was fair to banish the queen like that? Okay. She started eating people though, but then just think about what happened to her before. So what do you think? As we got to the bottom of the stairs, the darkness grew steadily lighter, from black to gray and then ash. There was light coming down from somewhere ahead of us. There it is! I looked at where he was pointing. Whoa! The light in the cavern was all coming from the huge jewel in the middle of this empty room. That must be the Python jewel. I stepped forward. It's beautiful. Just grab it, princess, and let's get out of here, Tuntuni said, his claws digging painfully into my shoulder. Wait, why is nobody guarding it? Neil pulled me back into the shadows. Something isn't right. Do you think something's there? If there's something precious, usually there's some people guarding it or someone guarding it. It seems suspicious here. What do you think, guys? I see Mate. What are you thinking?
I think there's in the shadow there is a cobra and it's guarding.
You think the cobra is guarding it in the dark? Okay.
So they can't see it.
All right, Nevin, what are you thinking?
I think it's in the python's forehead.
Oh, kind of like this picture here, right?
Yeah.
So you think it's hidden in the head, and if they go grab it, they'll reveal the head or something?
No, like they'll be standing on the head when they grab it, I think.
All right, one more. Serene, what are you thinking?
I think just the same as my face.
All right, here we go. Let's see if they find it. We stood a couple minutes in the corner. Neil was directly in front of me, so I couldn't really see what he was doing, but I did hear his intake of breath. Wait, what is it? Well, Neil whispered back. Okay, there's good news and there's bad news. Okay, good news first. The good news is that that's probably the Python jewel, and it's going to work to read the map. Okay, and the bad news? Bad news is that it's being guarded by the most humongous python I've ever seen in my life. I peeked behind his back and had to stifle a scream. Toontoony dug his nails harder into my shoulder. I couldn't blame him. And just as Neil had said, a gargantuan python was prowling around the room, slithering in circles around the stone. It was so big that it made the Rikosh monster from my front lawn look like a garden gnome. So there's a picture of the python here, and right in the middle of its coils is the jewel. How are they going to get through that python to the jewel? Ugh! My fingers felt like ice. The cold of the cave had seeped into my bones and it made me shiver. Saving my parents, Lal and Mati, depended on us getting to the mountain, and we needed this jewel. My stomach clenched and my teeth started to rattle so much I was afraid the snake might hear them. I was having trouble getting enough air, and I started seeing black spots in front of my eyes. Okay, just breathe, Kieran. Neil turned around, placing a warm hand on my shoulder. You've got to keep it together. We need that jewel. Our families are counting on us. But how are we going to get it without that thing noticing us? It seemed impossible. It's impossible! The talking bird was now hysterical. Impossible, I tell you! Well, we'll let the python notice. That's how we'll get the jewel. Wait a second. We have to get the python to notice. That's the only way they can get the jewel? What? What do you think they're trying to do? Why would they want the python to notice them? Sarah, I see your hand. What are you thinking?
So that will go away from
Okay.
We'll go get it.
All right. I see that you mentioned distraction, kind of. Zara mentioned it too. Saul mentioned it too. Yes, I think maybe some kind of distraction plan might be going on. Here we go. Bringing his lips close to my ear, Neil whispered his completely insane idea, but it just might work. Problem was, though, if it didn't work, we were all going to be snake lunch. Are you sure? I asked again. It's the only thing I can think of, Neil said. Believe me, if I had a better plan, I would have thought of it. We're all gonna die, we're all gonna die, we're all gonna die. Toontoony kept mumbling, a yellow wing over his eyes. Oh, shut up, Toonie, just stick to the plan. Neil grabbed the bird and plunked him on his shoulder. With a crooked smile, he said to us, okay, don't mess up, all right? And then Neil stepped into the light of the python jewel. Hey, Snakey! Neil waved his arms around, distracting the snake away from me and away from the jewel. Yes, just like that, Zara. Then Toontoony, who was now flying around in high circles, singing a snake charming song. Babaram Sapur, where do you go, Bapur? Come on, Baba, come and see. Snakes for you and snakes for me. As Neil had planned, the python hissed and turned toward, away from the treasure it was protecting. It slithered rapidly toward Neil. I crept out of my hiding place and toward the jewel. I was supposed to grab it while Neil distracted the serpent. The problem was, though, Neil hadn't calculated how much faster the ground was able to travel on this muddy ground. As I tried to run over the jewel, my feet kept getting stuck in the slits of the ground. Sorry, in the silt of the ground. So silt is a kind of soft soil. So it's very soft and it kind of is muddy, so it's hard to walk in. No matter how hard I tried to urge myself forward, the ground didn't seem to want to let me in. Come on, Snakey, is that the best you can do? Neil taunted. You need a little snake charmer to teach you a lesson? And Tutuni kept singing. So far, Operation Distract and Annoy was working, but at this rate, there was no way I was going to make it to the jewel before the snake reached Neil. In fact, it was on him right now. And even though he fought his parries with his sword, he couldn't seem to injure it. Tuntuni kept on singing, but he was too afraid to help and fight. With a hiss, the snake almost knocked Neil over. I struggled to hurry, but the floor's muddy surface was like walking through syrup. My thighs were burning from trying to move faster and faster, and I hadn't moved anywhere closer than I needed to go. At this point, I was closer to Neil than the serpent was to the... I was still closer to Neil and the serpent than I was to the jewel. Is the plan working out really well right now? Ah! Then the snake grabbed hold of Neil and wrapped himself around Neil, beginning to squeeze. All right, now we know some snakes, the way that they kill their prey is by poison and venom. But if you remember correctly, what do some other types of serpents do out there in the jungle? How do they destroy it? What was that? I heard it somewhere here.
Can I say it?
Who was? Oh, was that Dushan? Yeah.
Yeah, they squeeze you, so then you suffocate.
Yes, and I think that might be what the snake is doing. Some snakes they don't bite you. They'll squeeze you until you suffocate.
That's why some snakes can kill crocodiles.
That's right.
Antelope. They can squeeze
Here.
them, prevent them
Yeah.
from breathing.
The snake grabbed hold of Neil, wrapped himself around him, and began to squeeze. It was obvious how much stronger this animal was than the half-demon prince. Neil was struggling. He had a grip on his sword, and he tried to injure the python with slashing, but the snake's skin was unbelievably tough. The sword barely made any dents. Tuntuni, to his credit, tried a few dives from the roof, flapping his wings in the snake's eyes, but he couldn't break the python's concentration that it had on its prey. Neil's face was getting redder every second the snake squeezed. "Princess, do something! The prince is gonna die!" Tuntuni shrieked. And that is the end of chapter 19.